Everybody done that?
Can you repeat it for those of us writing?
82623. Text message CA, and you will be hooked up with all of the Bernie Sanders updates. All right. Now I would like to call up our local Bernie organizer. I'm looking for her, Natalie Gray. Let's give it up for Natalie Gray. So hard here for the Bernie Sanders campaign. She's going to give you some important information.
The important information I have is that the last day for registration is May 23rd, which is rapidly approaching. If you are not registered, please register tonight or tomorrow. We have registration forms outside. We also have these cards so you can register online. We would prefer, of course, to register Democrat just because it's easier. But if you want to choose to register as no party preference, that's great. But please make sure that you ask for a Democratic crossover ballot. Do not take, if they try to give you a provisional ballot, say no, I want a Democratic crossover ballot. And we also have opportunities to volunteer on your way out. And I think that's what I covered. Please register. I'm pretty sure everybody is. And please vote for Bernie, obviously. Thank you so much.
I do have word that Ben Jealous is in the house. He's collecting his thoughts. He'll be here in just a few moments. And while we're waiting, we're going to have a few other very brief speakers here to share with you why they are Bernie Sanders supporters. Before I introduce the first speaker, though, I want to let you know about how this, who is organizing this event. The group organizing this is a Democratic club, Progressive Democratic Club of America, Monterey Bay Area. The PDA of Progressive Democrats are dedicated to working within and without the Democratic Party to try to advance the values of the Democratic Party. Values that we know from Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Values about taking care of our senior citizens. Values about taking care of our young people and our children, taking care of our college kids, and making this a country that where everyone has an opportunity to enjoy a good life. That's what PDA is all about. If you are interested in becoming a part of our club, please check us out on Facebook. If you go to Facebook, we've got a website called the Progressive Democrat Club, Monterey area. We also meet the second Tuesday at the Center for Change in Seaside at 6:30, and you'd all be very welcome. Thursday, second Thursday. The last thing I'd like to say before I introduce our next speaker is, as you came in, you might have seen a slate. There are a slate of 6 people who were endorsed by the Progressive Democrats. Those folks are running for District 5, which includes Carmel, Pacific Grove, and Monterey. We're trying to get folks on the Central Committee for the Democratic Party who also, there they are, Timothy Barrett, Jan Black, Natalie Gray, who is so elegantly holding the sign, Gary Carnes, Bill Leone, and Jennifer Rigby. So if you do live in District 5, please vote for those folks and share this information with your friends. All right, I'd like to now introduce a Bernie supporter, Maria Domingo. Maria is an NPC student. Recently we had some protesters come to NPC to basically preach anti-choice rhetoric, and Maria proudly did an anti-protest and let them know that the women of the Monterey area and the women of NPC and the men of NPC do not appreciate that. Maria has also been helping out at the farmers market, getting the word out for Bernie Sanders. Maria.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Maria Domingo. I'm a student here in the Monterey Peninsula, and I also volunteer with Monterey Day for Bernie Sanders. It's crazy standing up here in front of all these people at a political rally and being so involved in politics as I have these past few months, because I was never involved in politics before Bernie Sanders. If anything, I was very outraged by our system, and I felt there was a lot of corruption, and I didn't want to be involved with politicians that only cared about money and power. But Bernie Sanders has inspired me so much, and I think it's really beautiful that all these people are coming together for a common cause and wanting a future to believe in. Bernie Sanders stands with us. He is for the 99%. He truly wants to help America and speak for the people who have been silenced, and we will keep fighting for a change. He has inspired people from all walks of life, and it's just amazing seeing all these people here, seeing all these people phone making and volunteering and just being so involved. And I'm just honored to be here and honored to be a part of this political revolution. And so now I would like to introduce John McPherson. He is for Salinas for Bernie Sanders.
Pretty awesome, the microphone makes it a lot easier to talk. Normally I teach, so I have to kind of project to the back, but this thing makes it easier, so it's kind of nice. And obviously more well behaved than the students on the street. So, they asked me to talk about today, why is our volunteers Bernie? And the one simple sentence was that I was not alone. Last year when I lived in Minneapolis, I lived there for 2 years. A lot of people had the same question I did. Who was this guy? I kind of knew who he was. I knew he was a senator, but I didn't really know his views on things. I didn't really know where he stood on a lot of issues. And so, like me, a lot of people, slowly but surely, they were getting more and more interested. You heard about things going on in Iowa. You heard about things going on in Minnesota. It started with small groups like this, in 100, 200, but then all of a sudden you started seeing it get bigger and bigger and bigger. So you knew, you were not alone. I heard his message of asking for a $15 minimum wage. And it wasn't because he hated rich people. It's because he simply wanted that if you were working, then you deserve to have a minimum standard of living. You shouldn't have to work 40 hours a week and still have to work 40 more just to feed your kids. You know, so I knew when I heard speak, also, like her, I was an NPC student, I'm an alumnus from there. So I especially was not alone when I heard her speak about public universities being tuition free. You know, because I was not alone when I was wondering so many days, you know, what do I do? Do I buy books today or do I buy gas? Do I pay my car insurance or do I go out with my friends? You know, but when he said how he was going to do it, he didn't say, I'm going to be Robin Hood, I'm going to rob from the rich and I'm going to take from the poor. He said, all I want, all you need to do is have a fraction of a percent tax on the people speculating on Wall Street, and we can today pay for public education. What is so wrong with that?
Nothing.
As I find myself getting older, I was not alone. I'm sure many of you have the same thought as I. You listen to him speak about single-payer health plan. You know, you listen to that and you wonder, why is it I avoid going to the doctor? Because even if I go to the doctor, I'm going to need another visit right after I see the bill. So, you know, and I knew I was not alone in that, because so often we don't go to the doctor, because we don't think, oh, the doctor's going to make me better. We know we'll get better. But we worry, what's going to happen to me when I see that bill? And so I also thought to myself, I'd lived abroad, I'd been in Korea for 4 years, and I thought, you know, when I was there, I had single-payer health care. And unfortunately, in that, I wasn't. Because a lot of my friends, a lot of my relatives, they've never experienced that. You know, when I was playing baseball and I rolled my ankle busting up a ligament, the doctor apologized to me. And he said, you know, I'm sorry, today you're going to have to pay $50. I said, that's it? He said, yeah. I was like, but I had x-rays, a cast, a visit, a shot, you're an orthopedist. He was like, yeah, $50 is kind of high. And so, you know, he rejected my proposal of marriage. I immediately asked him, that's the kind of person I want in my life, and he's going to offer me those kind of benefits. But, you know, sadly, I was alone. Because too many people here have not experienced that yet. And it's about time that we do.
Yes.
Now, most importantly, I was not alone when I started volunteering here in Salinas. You know, who here has volunteered? Stand up. If you're not, stand up if you volunteer. Yeah, take a look around. Realize you are not the only one volunteering. When there's only 2 of you out canvassing, when it's only 3 of you at a phone bank, when it's 4 of you at voter registration, look around you, you are not alone when you volunteer. Before I go, who here has not volunteered, but knows after today, with 17 days left, with the choice left to us to go out there, to knock on doors, to make phone calls, to register voters until Monday, who here is going to stand up and say, I'm going to go out there and help Bernie Sanders get elected? Remember this feeling, because when there's 17 days left and you're walking those thousands of steps, when those people are asking you, why are you still supporting Bernie when it's over to them? I want you to remember this feeling, because you are not alone. These people here are with you. We're here on the Central Coast, and we're not stopping, even on June 7th. We're going forward, and together we will make a difference in our society. Now, it's a distinct privilege to introduce to you this upcoming group. These are the people to go to Philadelphia. Now, the reason why it's so important that we get out there and get out the vote is the more votes we get, the more delegates that get to go and fight for Bernie in Philadelphia. So I'd like to introduce a whole group of people. If you could come up here. First off, we have Alan Hoffa.
Please go vote, get all your friends to vote, volunteer so we can knock the vote for Bernie out the park. Thank you.
All right.
My name is Gary Patton. I was an elected official in Santa Cruz County for 20 years, and I knew that at the local level, and it was true, we could change the world when we got involved. I've never seen that possibility before at the national level. It's right here, folks. We can change the world and let no more military adventurism for our country, no more concentration on the rich instead of the ordinary people, and no more turning our back on the greatest challenge to this generation, and I mean all of us in this generation, global warming. We need it surprises you, because when you see that something actually can change, then you'll get involved. We need to show California strong for Bernie, and we'll turn it around in Philadelphia.
For 20 years, I represented all teachers and all state agencies for union negotiations. I negotiated for the Kapor Valley Federation of Teachers. So I'm primarily a union person, an educator, and a prison reformer. But also an environmentalist. And my wife and I are the ones who started San Benito Rising that 2 years ago. Protect Monterey County, we just collected 16,000 signatures. This campaign is a democratic campaign. It's reviving democracy in our country. And one of the beauties of democracy is we don't have to speak with one voice. That's not democracy. So I'm going to give you a dissenting opinion here. It's just going to take a moment. We've got 2 days left to lasso in as many young people to vote as possible. And the best way to do that is to use the electronic registertovote.ca.gov, because it doesn't allow you to make a mistake. The paper runs at 25% mistake ratio, and then if it's mistaken, they are not registered. So you should use the electronic voter, and you should spread that out to everybody. I'm concerned that there aren't enough young people in this room, and the reason why I say this is because when you go out and collect thousands of signatures, and you talk to young people, 90% of them support Bernie Sanders. So the real win is about getting young people registered to vote and making sure that they do vote. That's what everybody should be focused on right now. And finally, about the rituals of Democratic campaigning, canvassing, and phone banking. Those of you like me who get it here and have got reports from across the country know that canvassing is not what it was 30 years ago. You find very few people at home, and phone banking, you're using landlines, and only, I hate to say it, parolees and mental defectives still only have landlines. Everybody else uses phone bank, uses a cell phone, and certainly none of the young people use landlines anymore. So you don't reach any of them. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Like that, Bernie here, we do have Bernie here in a virtual way. We're going to have a very brief video with Bernie, and then we will have Benjamin Jealous. All right, let's play the video.
Yo creo que siempre voy a luchar mientras yo vea a mis hijos felices y que ellos estén bien. Voy a seguir luchando por ellos, darles lo mejor. Pues mis hijos son como el motor de mi vida, que me da. Mi familia aquí son mis 3 niños, aquí en Mocali, Florida. Y Mocali es un pueblo pequeño, pero está lleno de gente muy trabajadora y también muy amable. Es un pueblo muy bonito, en medio de todo lo que ha habido en el trabajo, abusos en el campo. Yo cuando vine de México empecé a trabajar en el campo. Bueno, los tomates que yo piso son los que se usan como en ensaladas americanas. Había más abusos de los patrones hacia sus trabajadores, o de que no les proveían lo necesario como agua o los baños. Los patrones se enojaban de que si ya no querían seguir trabajando, hasta se agarraban a golpes. Solamente en las noches a veces uno se pone como, a veces hasta a llorar porque no le alcanza a uno. También a los niños les afecta porque a veces no alcanzaban para todo lo que era como la comida. No conocen, no saben por todo lo que uno tiene que pasar, porque tenemos familias. Y yo empecé a participar como a las protestas por comida justa, fue en el 2010. Comida justa está pidiendo que las grandes corporaciones paguen como 1 centavo más por libra de tomate para que así también les llegara a los trabajadores lo que es justo. Empecé a participar porque me pareció que es bueno que haya personas que se preocupan por mejorar las condiciones de trabajo, porque es ahí donde menos se preocupan la gente.
In January of 2008, I went to Unlucky. What I discovered was a human tragedy. Workers were being paid starvation wages and subjected to abusive labor practices.
Bernie Sanders, él se interesó en la vida de los trabajadores y quiso saber de las luchas políticos que muchas veces nunca llegan aquí en Mocali. Él no solo se quedó con lo que vio aquí en Mocali.
We heard the voices of Immokalee, workers who were at the lowest rung of the economic ladder, workers who had no rights.
Se fue a Washington e hizo una junta con los senadores, se puede decir, para que conocieran lo que se vive aquí en Mocali. Y sí hay más derechos y más apoyo como a los trabajadores. Empezó a ver como los cambios en el pago. Sí fue algo mejor. Ya tenía para comprarle cositas a los niños. Y pues sí, eso cambia a la persona.
But how many more Immokalees are there? How many fields or factories are there? We have to ask ourselves, who benefits from this exploitation? And to understand that it is not only the Immokalee workers who suffer, but every worker in America, because that pushes us into a race to the bottom.
And that video shows why we love Bernie so much, because he loves us, and he's going to work hard for us. At this time, I'd like to introduce Stephen Goings. Stephen is a CSU&B graduate and has been an active member on the executive board of Monterey-based NAACP. Please welcome Stephen Goings and Stephen.
Who will be the next president of the United States? It's exciting to be here. For one thing, this is the first time I've been to this gym since I graduated from Seaside High in 1981. I have the high honor and privilege of introducing a truly great man who is both a local and national hero, who is working to elect Bernie Sanders as the most progressive president in U.S. history. Many on the peninsula know him as the son of fellow local heroes, Fred and Jealous. Bill Jealous is probably best known as the youngest person ever to serve as the president and CEO of the nation's oldest and boldest civil rights organization, the NAACP. Having been promoted to that job by the late great Julie Barr. That CSU&B officials select Ben for our Peninsula speaker this year. So naturally, his father, his doting father, sent me an article from a Princeton newspaper. So this is how Ben's dad would like me to introduce him to you. Ben Todd Jealous is a current partner at Kapor Kapor, where he has been an advisor for multiple tech startups, working to close gaps for access, opportunity, and participation for everyday Americans. He will serve as a visiting lecturer at Princeton University. During the 2016-17 academic year, Mr. Jealous will teach a curriculum focused on issues of crime, policing, leadership, and social entrepreneurship. Mr. Jealous is also currently a senior fellow at the Center for American Progress. His career has included positions as executive director of the National Newspaper Publishing Association and managing editor editor of the Jackson Advocate, the oldest black-owned weekly newspaper of Mississippi. Mr. Jealous was named a Young Global Leader by the World Economic Forum in 2013 and received the 2012 Huffman Nathan Prize for Creative Citizenship. He is co-author of the book Reach 40 Black Men Seeking a Living, Leading, and Succeeding, an Oxford University Rhodes Scholar. He holds a BA in Political Science from Columbia University and an MS in Comparative Social Policy from Oxford. During his term at the NAACP, Mr. Jealous partnered with numerous government officials at both the state and national level to achieve policy reforms in the fields of education, immigration, voting rights, criminal justice, and marriage equality. All areas that we know Bernie Sanders is sure to address. I give you Benjamin Todd Jealous.
This campaign from the very beginning has been about more than Bernie, as he says, not me, us. It's about us rising up and saying, you know, ending fracking is not a fringe idea. Woo!
That's right.
It's about an old civil rights activist like Bernie rising up and saying, you know, funny thing, public universities were almost free before the end of segregation.
Bring it back.
Because we filled up the big house with so many of their
for just a little more of a context. People say to you, how do you pay for the so-called free tuition, public higher education that Bernie's talking about? How do you pay for that? Ask them, how are we paying for all these prisons? It's 1970, 3% of the state budget went to prisons in California, and 11% went to public colleges and universities. And our public higher education system was considered to be among the best in the world, and you know what else? It was almost free. It was free. That really makes me crazy. And then you fast forward, 2010, here in California, 11% of the state budget went to prisons. 3% 40 years earlier. 7.5% went to public universities. Our universities have become far from free. Well, they were rusting. A few years later, Jerry Brown, and this is the trouble with moderates, and I love Jerry for a lot of ways, but he's changed over time. No longer Moonbeam Jerry. And Jerry proposed 15% for prisons in California and 6% for public universities. What bad policy and bad intentions have done, good policy and good intentions can undo. Right. Now, when I endorsed Bernie Sanders, I had friends, some of them, John Lewis, some of them rather impolitely say, why are you endorsing Bernie Sanders? You're a black leader in America, why are you endorsing Bernie Sanders? Maybe if they knew I was a serf that came from Monterey County, they said, why are you endorsing Bernie Sanders? And I said, because Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. gave us 3 evils to fight above all else: racism, militarism, and greed. And I know the other candidate. I did advance for the other candidate. I've watched that family my entire life in politics. And her track record on racism is confusing. And on militarism is confounding. And on greed is trouble. And so I went to go check out this dude named Bernie Sanders, who I also knew, but quite honestly didn't spend as much time with, because we could always count on his vote at the NAACP. And that's the nature of politics. When you're a really good friend, you can get kind of lonely because your friends know they can count on you, and there's these other folks, we call them moderates, there's these other folks who you got to sit on and make sure they always go the right way, and they don't put in amendments to kill the intent of your bill. And Bernie had a 97%, still does, lifetime voting average at the end of the NAACP. And to those who, they would always come back, so we would go through Hillary's record. I won't spend too much time on that, but it is. Go through Bernie's record. I mean, here's a guy, right, who starts off in college. His priorities then were racial justice and economic justice. He's in Chicago. He's the chair of the Congress of Racial Equality at his university. He leads it into merging with the SNCC chapter. He goes to jail. I mean, there's a lot of people who will tell you that they were at the March in Washington. He was actually there, but there's very few white men you will meet who went to jail with the Congress of Racial Equality seeking to desegregate major cities. My father's one of them. Because he raised me, and because I've lived my whole life with him, I know how few others there are, and Bernie's one. And then he shows up, he doesn't just deliver the of Vermont, think about that, delivered the state of Vermont for Jesse Jackson in 1980. He was on the 84 campaign, which was only a racial justice activist effort. And we talked about his record with the NAACP. So you have this guy who you roll the tape back, and he says the same thing. Now, I'll admit, when he gets to Vermont, it shifts. He talks first about economic justice and then about racial justice. How many other people in Vermont talk about racial justice who are ambitious white politicians? Don't imagine that. But whether it's A or B or B or A, it goes back. And that's what we have to understand, is that Bernie's values are the values of our movements. The environmentalist movement, the civil rights movement, the women's rights movement, the peace movement, the labor movement. One of the hardest things of a campaign is to come across, quite frankly, union presidents who don't believe unions can win anymore. Because that's the only thing that explains why so many of them have endorsed the other candidate. She's made it very clear that her agenda is not their agenda. She has not met a bad trade deal she didn't fall in love with them for a second. But here's the other thing, and it's even more clear now than when I first started talking about it. It's Californians, especially. Don't let anyone convince you Donald Trump can. Remember what they said about Ronald Reagan. Remember what they said about Arnold Schwarzenegger. Remember what they said about Jesse the Body Ventura. I mean, even his name was a little embarrassing. And they all won. Celebrity, conservatives, especially those who have come a little populist tinge and are willing to lay footsie with white supremacists, win in ways that confound and astound the DC establishment. And the number one priority of Democrats, of independents of good conscience, of people of good conscience in this country must be to defeat Donald Trump in this way. Or banning people from airplanes simply because how they look should terrify all of us. Funny thing about bullies, they may not be bullying you at this moment, but it's all they know how to do, so they will get to you eventually. No one's safe from a Donald Trump president. And if our candidate does not win, we have to be very clear that we cannot do anything that does anything but add up to the defeat of Donald Trump. And let me be very clear, Bernie is by far the best candidate to beat Donald Trump. Right to the very end in 2008, as she has said, she wouldn't ask Bernie to do anything but that. We must pick up every possible delegate that we can pick up, because right now, to be honest, Hillary is showing no signs of trying to lead our base. We cannot control our base. There's no delivering Bernie's base to Hillary. No, she will have to move towards our base. Should she win, and there's still a chance we can, and this state is vital. Should she win, let's be really clear, the only hope that she has to win is if she can begin to lead our base, and the only way that she does that is she has to move considerably towards Bernie. We have union members in 300 cities demanding a $15 minimum wage 4 weeks ago. You don't excite them talking about $12 minimum wage. The peace movement is stronger, and some of them don't even call them, it is young people who were born into a moment of peace we call the end of the Cold War. actually practiced the values they learned in the anti-war movement in the 1960s and voted against the foolish war in Iraq, we'd have trillions more right now. Then literally, that's the other way. So how are we going to pay for all this? You know what, funny thing, I've been a CEO since I was in my 20s. I've learned most of the skills as an organizer here on my teams, but one thing that's sort of hard to calculate, you only see in hindsight, and usually only after a train wreck, is how much good judgments on the front end saves you on the back. But we know how much the bad judgment of all these folks lining up to go for the war in Iraq has cost us. And it's terrifying. And Hillary is out there talking about a no-flyover zone in Syria. She is Barack Obama's former Secretary of State. The President, the Commander-in-Chief, has said we cannot have a no-flyover zone in Syria because A, it would distract us from the war against ISIS. B, it would be a banana peel that would flip us right back into one more endless war in the Middle East. And C, we can't afford that. And yet she's wrapped herself in the mantle of Barack's presidency and gone out there and shown herself to be the most hawkish Democrat we have ever seen. And you will not excite the left flank of our party trying to peddle war. And that's why this fight is so hard. The mainstream media, literally, you look at the difference in free media they've given Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton versus Bernie Sanders, and it can only be calculated in the billions. And they've done their best, and sometimes it's a little disappointing. Chris Hayes, Rachel Maddow behave at times in ways that really can confound me, because I know they're both friends and they're good progressive. But we cannot let the mainstream media deter us from understanding the truth, which is that this campaign is the only campaign in the Democratic Party for president in this entire race that has ever had any energy. This campaign is the campaign that contains the future of the Democratic Party.
Amen.
Has never been about Bernie Sanders. This campaign has been about all of us who are sick and tired of being sick and tired, who are tired of children in our neighborhoods who don't get raised right because their parents have to work 70 hours a week just to feed them. To give money to our friends who are teachers so they can pack backpacks full of food to send home on Friday so the babies that are their students don't starve over the weekend. We can give you the names of family members who died unnecessarily because we still have tens of millions of Americans without health care. And who, like me, can call the names of classmates who died in Iraq unnecessarily. And who, like all of us, have paid too dear a price for mass incarceration. Let me be really clear on this point. There is not a person under 30, maybe under 40, maybe under 50, that you know who has not paid a price for mass incarceration. To break down how this works. You see, on the one hand, you have two kids, that's pretty clear, we talked about it, but you have the kids who are in college in record numbers. I mean, a black man in America, but let's talk about, we'll get to the white man in a second. Black men in America, we talk about blacks in prison all the time. Fine, great, we have about 1 million black men in prison, and yes, we are 3 times more likely to be incarcerated than black men in South Africa. The height of apartheid in South Africa was the world's leading incarcerator. That's the state of racial justice in America. But let's talk about the justice system in general. See, because there's not just about 1 million black men in prison, there's also about 1 million white men in prison. Now, it's a bigger population, so it's a lower differential, but here's the funny thing. We don't just have the most incarcerated black people on the planet, we also have the most incarcerated white people. In fact, we incarcerate white men at such a frightening rate that a white man in America today is 3/4 as likely to be incarcerated as a black man in South Africa out of apartheid. Up from half as likely about 15 years ago. And the thing is this, the black community clusters at about 40% on the income sort of wealth continuum of the white community. So when you look at poor whites, Because virtually everybody was in prison. I mean, like over 90%. Too poor to afford their own lawyer. Poor whites are more likely to be incarcerated than black men in South Africa, who, by the way, were virtually all poor in apartheid. This campaign is about ending mass incarceration in a transformative way. And people will say, what has that Bernie ever done? Well, first of all, if you understand the Senate, you understand we don't pass bills, we do a lot of amendments. He's the king of amendments in the Senate. He has that title for years. But what you'll also find out is that on issues like the ones that we care about, kind of real brass tacks issues, there's a funny thing. You have activists on both sides of the aisle who actually have similar beliefs. Donald Trump. I mean, there's a lot of problems with Donald Trump. The funny thing, Donald Trump is against bad trade deals. Donald Trump has advocated for single-payer health insurance. The Republican Party's activists, the Tea Party, I've worked with them in Texas and Georgia to shrink those prison systems faster than California and Trump. California's still in Trump. Prop 47 vote. But we ain't there. Texas has now slated to shut down 12 prisons because they're local. And why is that important? Because people will try to pretend like Bernie has done nothing. And yet, the Federal Reserve only got audited because he reached across the aisle to Rand Paul's father, and they pushed through the House and the Senate a bill to audit the Federal Reserve. Veterans' benefits have been much improved. John McCain will tell you Bernie did more for veterans than Hillary ever did. Because he reached across the aisle to John McCain and got it done. Heating oil. Critical for the survival of poor people, poor families in the coldest parts of the oldest states in this country. Heating oil. Again and again, because Bernie Sanders reached across the aisle to Republicans, similar states, and got it done. There's a theory in Washington that they peddle. They've peddled it since the days of the DLC that Bill Clinton set up. That, again, what's plagued so many of these union leaders who are friends. That we can't win. That activists can't win. That we need a moderate to lead for us. That when the Republicans are in control of the House and the Senate, how dare we aspire to build a movement to run them out of office and take back our House and our Senate, which we have done before and we can't do again.
Better.
No, they say, no, that's the status quo. That's the way it will be. You better send a moderate to negotiate. And this, part of my language, is how we get screwed. Because what happens is this. They start off, Republican, like if you play football, they don't start off at like the 0 or the 1. They start off at the other end of the end zone, like under the field goal. Then beyond, they're like at 110%. And we start out over here. And we're at the 100. And then a moderate comes along and says, you know what? Let me inch up to the 75. And then we start tug of war. We're on the 25. They're like at 110%. They're 10 yards too far. And we start pulling, and you know what? We end up like at the 30. And we're like, how did we lose 70% of what we were fighting? Because we started in the wrong place. There's another theory in politics. It's the one that we've used to shrink prison systems in Georgia and Texas faster than California. Which is a game recognizes game. You bring your best activists, I'll bring my best activists. We'll start over here at 0 minus 10%. You start over there at 100 plus 10%. We'll do tug of war. You know what? If we get to a compromise, it'll be up to 50. And that's what a real compromise looks like, and that's what real negotiation looks like, and that's what real leadership looks like. And so I want you to understand, I mean, when you travel with Bernie, when you go to these states, when you meet voting rights activists in South Carolina, black voting rights activists who are for Bernie because he's the only one that they trust to really fight against these crazy Southern governors and for our voting rights, to actually put not Republicans on the Supreme Court as Democrats, but actual progressives on the Supreme Court, knowing the next president may appoint them. When you travel across this country and you meet young Occupy Wall Street activists in Chicago, as I came out to introduce Bernie 10 o'clock at night, we will not confirm or deny whether or not our people happened to shut down the Trump rally about 36 hours earlier. And we come out, the first thing I said to that crowd was like, look, before I get started, I want to say, Mr. Trump, this is what a rally in Chicago is. And you see those young people go crazy, and kind of halfway through the breaking into this is what democracy looks like. And they're every race, and they're every color, and their place is half black, and Hillary couldn't fill up a room that day of 700 people, and we had turned around 5,000 at the door. And then you travel the next day down to the Ozarks. And the greatest applause line in Chicago, which was about stopping the police from killing unarmed black men. Bernie says in the Ozarks, in southwestern Missouri, in a room that's 90% white and 10% of the people are camouflage, about to go deer hunting, or maybe coming back. And it's the loudest applause line again. This is what the media has been unable to explain about this campaign. I mean, they hear really good stories about black church ladies love Hillary, and young white people love Bernie, and grouchy old white men can be found at the Trump rally. The stereotypes, they do really well. The glass half empty stories, they do really well. But I haven't seen the story yet about now literally hundreds of thousands of white people across this country cheering to advance racial justice. And that's critical because, yes, there's a new majority coming in our country and in our party, and blacks and Latinos are a big part of it, but you don't get a new majority without progressive rights. And here's a funny thing. You don't get a new majority in Missouri without deer hunters. I'm not sure you can be like a true progressive the way we define it in California and be a deer hunter, but there's a lot of guys in the Ozarks who are down for racial justice. And Bernie and I were backstage at that rally, and I talked to him about that. He said, Ben, I'm glad you see it too. Because that's the revolution in this room. That's what there's no coming back. Now, you've got a primary out here with 7. And the reality is that every day you'll probably check the news, and every day the news will try to tell you you don't have a chance. I want you to remember, we've been climbing Mount Everest in tennis shoes since the very beginning, and we're near the top. You'll see polls, and they'll tell you that we're further back than we think we should. I want to remind you that they told us in Michigan we would lose by 23 points, and we won by 4. You will see polls that have already come out that say Trump is now leading Hillary head-to-head. Let that make you work harder. Even if our candidate does not win, our movement is the only thing that can defeat Trump at the polls. Hillary might get to 45% by herself, but you know what? In America, you don't win until you get to 51. And that margin comes from us. In these next days, you will have any number of regular, routine emergencies or inconveniences that come up in our lives. Figure out how to overcome them. We need you knocking, we need you calling, we need you convincing, we need you inspiring, countering the spin of the mainstream media, pushing out this very idea that we can win, that people like us can win, that folks who are tired, who are sick and tired of being sick and tired, who are tired of endless war, who are tired of menial pay, who are tired of investing in fear and prisons rather than love and education, that we can win. And when somebody tries to tell you, oh, they're all the same, saying, oh, this is difficult. And when somebody tries to tell you, well, he can't win, say, we still can. And when it comes to this fall, make sure that you are prepared to support every progressive lower down the ticket. Because that'll be the ticket if Hillary's on the ticket. And one last lesson I want to leave you with. 2010 was like the worst election for Democrats maybe in our modern memory. 2008 had been the best. 2010, if you ask the historians, we got clean. Funny thing happened in California. Turnout amongst progressives, amongst blacks in some districts, was actually higher in many places than it was in 2008. And Kamala Harris became Attorney General. Barack was off the ticket nationally. Republicans have been preparing for it. They invested. They ran activist candidates. They cleaned our clock everywhere except California and Nevada. And why? Because we had inspiring candidates on the ticket. And we backed them. And we invested in them. What we did with Kamala Harris in 2010 in California that defied the odds and buoyed a bunch of other campaigns across the state, we can do with other progressive candidates, and I mean city council if it has to be, dog catcher, certainly mayor. We are building a movement. This movement has already transformed our party. Nobody will ever be able to say, oh, I have to go court the billionaires if I want to be president. Nobody will ever be able to say, oh, I can't be a real progressive if I'm ambitious in politics. No one will ever be able to say again that people like us can't. Because we are the future of this party. We are the heart of this party. We are actually the only way this party has really ever won. And we've just hit the tipping point. Fight like hell. Don't give up. Don't stop knocking. Remember, this is not about this year. It never has been. It is about the lives of our children. It is about the future of our country. It is about changing everything from the way that the party operates in this county, to the way it operates in the state, to the way it operates in the country, but most importantly, it is not about Bernie, it is about us. And what you've already done in this county, what you've already done in this state, what we've already done from coast to coast shows that we own the future. So let's go out there and make sure Bernie wins Monterey.
Thank you all for coming out. And as Benjamin said, please do what you can. We all need to work together and we can win June 7th. Thank you.